This video will look at the latest acquisition to my collection, the general purpose quartz from Marathon, and pose the question, is it a keeper or is it going to be the first watch to make its way onto eBay in this series? I think it's worth noting that some of the footage recorded for this video was captured by my wife, so for your reference, her wrist size is 6.1 inches and mine is 6.6. I was slightly confused by the sizing of this watch when it first arrived, as it was advertised online as a 36mm, and clearly it isn't. The 36mm version is actually an entirely separate officer's model, so I can only assume this was a mistake on the website listing that I purchased from. And I guess it's worth mentioning it wasn't the official Marathon site. This is the 34mm quartz model in desert tan with tritium tubes on the dial, and actually very little else. This is an unbranded version. You'll find if you shop for a GPQ or a GPM that there are actually quite a few different variants available. We'll look into those options later on in the video. The watch is based on the original 1980s design that was contracted by the US government for use as a field watch across its armed forces. You'll find the GPM and GPQ on websites alongside other mil-spec and tactical gear, as well as traditional watch sites. As a field watch, the legibility is absolutely fantastic. I mentioned in a previous video on my Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic that field watches are genuinely faster to tell the time with, and if anything, this is another step up over that watch, as the dial is plainer and easier to read. For me, the main appeal of the watch was purely aesthetic. I saw it featured in a Teddy Baldassar video where it matched extremely well with a tan jumper. At work, I'm never particularly well presented. I'm dreadful at ironing and regularly have too much going on in my head thinking about the day to come to really give any thought to what I'm wearing. To try and counter this, I always try and wear brown leather shoes and a brown belt so that at least something is coordinated. This is in part why I would always choose a tan or brown leather watch strap over a black one, just to have something else that matches. So why not go a step further and have an entirely tan watch? The general purpose range has its own relatively unique design language born entirely out of functionality. While the dial is pure field watch, it has to have a lot of depth in it in order to accommodate the layers of tritium tubes mounted on the dial and hands. It was the tritium that was the other unique selling point for me in terms of it being a unique addition to my collection, as the only other watch in my collection which features tritium is a vintage model where the material is no longer remotely active. On a side note, you can tell if you have a watch like this if it features small T's on the dial. A T to the left of Swiss made indicates that elements of the dial feature tritium, with the one on the right indicating that the hands do. The benefit of tritium over other luminescent materials is that it doesn't need to be charged with light. It has a half-life, so it will diminish over time, and the glow is not particularly strong, but for the first decade or so of ownership, you'll always be able to tell the time in the dark. One downside of the tritium tubes is that they take up more space than other forms of luminescence, and so the GPQ ends up being thicker than you might expect for a watch of its size at 11mm. Now that's by no means thick, but it does give the watch a slightly chunky feel to it. I don't consider myself to be much of a purist when it comes to watch movements. Certainly I'm interested by them and I desperately want to own a spring drive, but if a quartz model is considerably cheaper than its mechanical or automatic counterpart, I won't just dismiss it out of hand. Here, I think the case for going down the quartz route is a strong one, as there is no automatic version of this watch as far as I'm aware. The prices for the quartz models are considerably cheaper, sometimes up to half the price during sale periods. Not only that, but because the quartz movement comes from ETA rather than the Japanese Seiko NH35 in the mechanical models, it features Swiss made on the dial. The quartz also means it's more accurate, and also features an end-of-life component to let you know when the battery needs replacing. Marathon make a clip-on compass, which when attached does make this watch look a little like a kid's toy. In this configuration, it gives off some serious budget Breitling Super Chronomat vibes. I absolutely hate that watch, by the way. While definitely not an addition I would ever consider adding, it does add further functionality in what is also a popular model amongst survivalists. Marathon also produce what they call an unmounted wrist compass, which is in essence a general purpose case with the innards stripped out and replaced with a larger compass. The advertising material for this shows that it can be worn in a similar way to the clip-on version, but perhaps this looks even clumsier. I think it's telling that the official website doesn't show a person wearing this setup. The thing is, while neither of these options is an interest to me, I do think it adds to that idea of pure functionality, so I do appreciate it being out there for other customers. Interestingly, there is a dead link on the Marathon website with the heading Digital under the general purpose range, which could potentially point towards a new addition to the range, as there hasn't been a general purpose digital watch for a few years at this point. If you dig around the website, it leads you to the ADNAC GPD, which is a very legible but also utterly hideous design. I dare say if they made something digital that was in line with the rest of the range, it couldn't go as badly as the PRX digital model. The supplied strap is really nothing more than functional, but because it's nylon, it is lightweight and breathable. Indeed, the case is advertised as high compact composite fibre shell. This is an extremely lightweight but durable material. When combined with the lightweight quartz movement and limited number of metal parts, the entire watch comes in at 27 grams. It's light to the point where often I forget that I'm even wearing it. If you did want to swap the strap out, the lug width of 16mm is a little more awkward than the more popular 18 or 20mm sizes, but there are still plenty of options out there. Not really sure what else could match the aesthetic of the watch any better than this though. The watch is rated to 3 atmospheres of pressure, which basically means it's water resistant to 30 meters. I actually think that's quite surprising. It goes against the go anywhere, do anything purpose of the watch. But at the same time, 30 meters of water resistance is more than enough for most use case scenarios. As I've mentioned, the general purpose range of 34mm field watches can be spec'd with either quartz or mechanical movements in a range of 3 colours. The desert tan you've seen in the video, sage green or black. The dial can be marked with the branding or not, and you can choose to have US government marking if you so choose. You've got the extremely ugly digital watch we've already mentioned that doesn't fit neatly into the collection at all, and the other model is the officer's watch. This comes in larger at 36mm and reminds me a little of the Hamilton Khaki King range. It doesn't share the same function over form aesthetic of the basic model though, so this isn't one I'd be interested in, particularly as it's more expensive. There is also a quartz version of the general purpose which has date functionality that carries a slightly higher RRP for the privilege. I'd say clear of this one personally, as a diagonal date window between 4 and 5 is perhaps my least favourite feature on any watch. It totally ruins the visual balance. I know that the brand itself matters to a lot of consumers, so let's take a quick diversion at this point into the history of Marathon as a company to see how it stacks up against its rivals. Weinstrom Watches was founded in 1904 in the United States by the Vine brothers, who were originally heralded from Russia. They became Marathon Watches in 1939 and are still family owned to this day. While still based in North America, the company now operates out of Canada, with its manufacturing taking place in the Swiss city of La Chaux-de-Fonds. Since 1941, the company has been producing watches for the Allied forces, hence its strong military links in its advertising material and watch range. With that, let's return to the main thrust of the video. Is this watch a keeper or not? I think it's going to be relatively polarising, because on one hand I imagine it's quite easy to dismiss this as a small and overpriced plastic quartz watch. All I would say to that argument is that the older I get, the more I appreciate the value of quality. Yes, you could get something similar to this for less, but you can almost guarantee it would be worse in almost every conceivable way. This watch is a good experience on wrist, featuring a colourway that, while dull, in practical terms goes with pretty much anything, and it has an aesthetic that is unique enough to stand out from a crowd. It also features that unique tritium component for my collection. So I think this is going to be a keeper for me, but let me know what you think in the comments below. A bit of a channel update to finish. I usually record the outdoor sections of my videos on my phone. It's not exactly professional, but it means I can film at a moment's notice whenever an interesting shot comes up. However, my phone has had it. The screen's peeling off, the battery is fried, and the motor in the camera has slowed to a crawl. I've ordered a replacement with a vastly superior camera setup, and I'm going to be learning some new editing software in the coming months. I've got a fair few videos already recorded, so it won't be immediately noticeable, but I'm hopeful that over time the quality on the channel will take another step forwards. I'm also weighing up selling off some of my collection to fund a bigger purchase. I haven't quite made my mind up on this yet. I really struggle with letting things go, but the 37mm Black Bay 54 from Tudor is calling to me in a way that I can't get out of my head. I realise that everything has been a keeper so far in this series, and that's going to be changing very soon. I think if I do bite the bullet, a state of the collection video might be in order, just to share with you what I've let go and my thought processes behind that. I really don't mind how many people watch my videos. As long as I feel I've done the best I can with them, I'm happy. Particularly if they go on to help someone else. But I would like to take a moment to thank you all for watching. If you want to see more, feel free to like and subscribe.